All right, so it has come to my attention that not many people get the inside jokes on this show. And when I say inside jokes, I mean they're not really funny in particular. I just been a wrestling fan for such a long time. I just find a certain things hilarious. Like when someone says they're losing their smile, nobody says that. But when someone says that, my brain goes to Shawn Michaels and his overdramatic speech about losing his smile. When someone says super kick party, I immediately think MMA kicks because I've watched WrestleMania 9 so many times by now. My brain is used to those words coming out of Jim Ross's mouth when describing a super kick. Jim Ross, world renowned wrestling commentator, journalist, legend in the wrestling business, had one of many flubs in his first night on the job at his first WrestleMania. Moving on. When someone says, step into my office, and that office ends up being the showers, my dark and twisted mind immediately wants to stop and yell, no, don't do it. Don't make a deal with the devil. Yeah, as a reference to the Bruiser Brody thing. That turned dark a little bit there. Okay, so not what I was going through. When the acclaimed are talking about scissoring each other, my brain immediately goes to, haha, funny, scissoring, get it? Straight to scissors. Hey, scissors. You know who shouldn't be allowed near scissors? Sid Vicious. Oh, shoot. This is going to turn into a dark episode. This episode of Under the Apron is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard yet, Anchor by Spotify is the easiest way to make a podcast with all the tools you need, all in one place. Just type in anchor.fm on your browser and start creating that podcast that you've been talking about starting all year long. Take advantage of Anchor's creation tools. You can record, edit, add music, or any type of audio you like right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast on many different listening platforms, such as Spotify, Apple, Google, or even Stitcher. And that's just to name a few. It's everything you need to make a podcast. And want to know what's the best part about it? Absolutely, totally free. Join us and download the Anchor app on your phone or go to anchor.fm on your browser to get started right away. Link will be in the show notes.
You're listening to Mama Murdered a Podcast. I'm your host, AB. Mama Murdered a Podcast is a podcast where me, the mama, will be killing it on the podcast. We'll be taking a deep dive into things that are hard to talk about and even harder to believe that these things actually happen in the world that we live in. This entire podcast will be a trigger warning. I'll be talking about triggering topics while I dive headfirst into a lot of the cases that I'll be covering. New episodes will be released every week on Wednesdays because nobody likes Mondays and because Fridays are for day drinking and barbecues. Some of the case topics will be murder, of course, serial killers, like Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, missing persons cases, like 5-year-old Summer Wells, who vanished from her own yard in broad daylight in the middle of June in Tennessee in 2021. And especially the ones where it kind of seems like they just vanished into thin air, like Brian Schaefer. He walked into a bar, but he never walked out. He's still never been seen again. I'll also be covering cold cases and lesser-known cases. Join me every Wednesday to talk about all things tragic, murder, and things that happen in the downright ugliest sides of society. If you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, you can rate me on Spotify. You can also leave a review and rating on Apple Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at murdered_mama. All of these things are free and they only take about a second to do, and it really does help grow the podcast. If you have any case suggestions, please send them my way. You can send them to the email address mamamurderedapodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!
Welcome back, podcasting friends. I'm Ernie. I talk a lot, mostly about wrestling. Sometimes the now, mostly the then, maybe possibly until forever. And if you're up for it, maybe together. I tried. I'm here. You're there. But most importantly, I am coming to you from under the apron. And this is our last episode of the year. We have made it. 2022 is in our rear view mirror. It's time for the road to 2023. I am pointing at the 2023 sign just like I would if it was WrestleMania. Don't worry, I'll soon be doing that as well. um, hey, Happy New Year, right? Okay, so for our last episode of the year, I think it's time we finally talk about the elephant in the room. Okay, maybe not the elephant. No, not the elephant. The scissors in the room. I'm looking at one right now. The scissor in the room. Scissors in the room. The scissor incident in the room. I left a few hints, maybe, for what this episode could be about. I got mostly wrong answers, but the 4 hints I left on Twitter and Instagram were a picture of Justice, Blind Justice. Justice! Okay, never again. A horse, the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Acclaimed, and Blood Splatter. Now, what do these have in common, you ask? What does one thing have to do with the other? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me just tell you. The Justice picture was for wrestler Sid Justice. And, figured if I had used the actual Sid Vicious, people would have gotten it right away. Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols, not actual Sid Vicious from wrestling. Either way, either Sid Vicious would people would have known. The next one was a horse. A horse. A horse. Yeah, a horse. Yes, a horse, man. A horse, man. A horseman. The best, one of the best horsemen, Arn Anderson. And by now you probably figured out the Acclaimed was a misdirect, and at the same time it wasn't. What are the Acclaimed known for? What are they known for? Tell me. They're known for scissoring. Yeah, I'm doing this weird thing where I'm scissoring myself. Oh, goodness, I'm scissoring myself. Okay, can we get past this? All right. And the last thing, of course, is the blood splatter as the final picture. It just means I'm going to be talking about the Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson scissor fight from almost 30 years ago. So, with that being said, trigger warning before we begin. Do you do a trigger warning? I've never done these kinds of true crime type episodes. Besties, anybody that does true crime, do you guys do a trigger warning? I was like, no, Mama Murder Podcast. No, I don't think she's ever done a trigger warning. Okay, so, but either way, the only one I've ever done of these kinds of true crime type episodes was episode 31, and it was the wrestling matches that turned into brutal shoot fights. I talk about an intergender match in New Japan Pro Wrestling involving Asuka, who was known as Kana at the time, getting in a brutal altercation with Minoru Suzuki. I eventually have a link in the show notes on where you can watch that match. It's now that's a trigger warning before you even start. All right, but before I start, I want to wish everyone a happy 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. We made it. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Felicidades a toda la gente. Toda la gente que habla español. A Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Mexico. Uh, because that's the only language I know how to speak other than English. I don't even know if I know English that well either. Uh, but yes, felicidades a toda la gente. Eh, Gracias por escucharme, gracias por el apoyo que me están dando ustedes. Y um, I'm excited. Shout out to Selena. We love her. But yeah, happy 2023. It, whoever listening, be safe out there if you're out partying and stuff. Be cool. And can't wait to talk to you again in the new year. But going back to the holidays, I didn't get anything big, but I did get two small things. And I wanted to share them with y'all because it was an awesome gift. First one was 101 Podcast Episode Template Book by David Hooper. It's such a great book. It's such a great book to read because I finished it. It's done. Um, I could have finished it earlier because I was so freaking excited to read it, but I decided, all right, let me chill for a moment because I realized I was almost done. It's the same thing that I do with Netflix and binging shows. Like I watch it and don't realize that, oh shoot, 8 episodes. It's the same thing with books. I read it until the last few chapters and I'm like, all right, pacing, pacing, pacing. But it's such an exciting book. He's also such an exciting person. And let me tell you the boring part about him as he puts it in the back of his book. He's a media marketing expert based in Nashville. He specializes in helping individuals and companies build audiences via broadcasting and podcasting. Yeah, like I said, it's a fun book. Something that I would take into consideration from him is making this show my very own and having fun with it. You know, going against the grain. If these podcasts are doing this thing, you go ahead and do that other thing. You got to read it. It's all in the book. And the other book, which I will be reading soon, for those that don't know, I'm a big fan of The Challenge. Um, Real World versus Road Rules back in the day, now just known as The Challenge. But I guess you already knew that by the Bananas audio that I have inserted in some of these banger matches. But the book that was given to me for Christmas was How to Win at the Challenge and Life, a champion's guide to eliminating obstacles, winning friends, and making that money by Sydney Foxvam. I skimmed through the book just for a taste. I looked at the back and it looks like former champions are in this book. A few of my favorites, of course, Bananas, CT, Wes, Rachel Robinson. So I'm gonna have to crack this book when I get a chance. Another reason I'm excited to share the news that I'm still being heard worldwide. I'll forever say it like that. I don't care. I'm still being heard worldwide. If you're new here, I kind of love to share these small accomplishments on here. I don't care. If you've been listening for a while, you know how I feel about these moments. I feel like we've been through a whole year of you guys listening to me ramble, and so I want to share with y'all who these countries are. A lot of countries. Whoa, there's a lot of countries. Let me just tell you, and they would actually take an insane person to actually sit there and list them all. Um, Insane. Maybe not insane. Insane is too of a word. I would say kind of like a maniac. Maniac. You don't maniac? You don't think so? All right. What if I said an animated maniac? Huh? You see where I'm going with this? Okay, more like an animaniac. You see where I get? All right. Hit it, Yakko.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador, too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda, Bahamas, Tobago, San Juan, Paraguay, Uruguay, Suriname, and French Guiana, Barbados, and Guam.
Okay, I'm just exaggerating. Only 40 countries. He didn't name some of them, but um, but they're mostly from the Netherlands, Spain, Argentina, and Mexico. Um, I'll go through them another time. But right now, let's just start this show. All right, so we have to go back to October 1993 in England. That was a rather different year for wrestling, especially in World Championship Wrestling, WCW at the time. The first night of the European tour for them at a house show. Now, I wasn't a fan of WCW at the time. I didn't know much about WCW. I only knew WWF existed. So I didn't get into WCW until possibly 1994 when I made friends around my neighborhood and they told me that they were going to watch a pay per view, and my first instinct was WWE. I didn't know any better. But uh, it was around that same time that Hogan was joining and all that. So that's probably why. Um, so there was a card at this house show in England, and it went like so. The Hollywood Blondes, Flying Brian Pillman, and Stunning Steve Austin defeated the team of Tuco Scorpio and Alexander Bagwell, who we all would know later years as Buff is the Stuff Bagwell from the NWO. Ricky Steamboat defeated Max Payne. The Nasty Boys defeated Arn Anderson and Johnny B. Bad. Ric Flair defeated William Regal, who held the WCW Television Championship, and went by Lord Steven Regal in a non-title match. Dustin Rhodes and Sting defeated the tag team of Rick Rude and Sid Vicious. And in the main event, Big Van Vader retained his WCW World Championship when he DQ'd himself against Davey Boy Smith, also known as the British Bulldog. Throughout the years, the story has changed on who started, you know, who was where at that moment, what actually happened. So this is going to be different accounts from different people, reliable, and it's coming from different websites. I just figured I put it into one whole thing and, get it into some of it what actually happened. Some of it is from that other person's point of view. I will post the site as well as the video footage of everyone's account and WCW President's reaction in all of this in the show notes. So it starts off with, according to Vader, they were working nonstop for 3 weeks, and then they had to board a plane and work for 2 more weeks in the European tour. He says they should have just got off the plane, wrestled, went to bed, and then skipped a day. Know what I'm saying? Skipped a day and stayed over there. We're talking about there was beer, the food ran out, and everybody was drinking. By the time we get off 10 hours later, we're talking about an 8-hour plane ride, a 2.5 hour trip, fighting, and a 10-hour bus ride. The guys were frazzled and worn. Another witness account, Tuco Scorpio, who went on to say, quote, we go over there, fly into Blackburn, England. We drove 3 hours, go to the show, just off the plane, and did that show. After the show, we had a 3 or 4 hour drive, maybe even five, back to the hotel where we were staying out of Blackburn. Everyone was off the bus, taking a few pills, having a few drinks. End quote. Uh, Here's the situation. A few people that were there were sitting in various different places. Vader was sitting with Steve Austin, having a few beers, having a few laughs. He recalls seeing a fight break out between Sid and Arn. He does nothing. Him and Austin are too tired and want to enjoy their drink. So they just sit there and watch the argument unfold. They didn't think anything of it, of course. They just saw it like, oh, they're just gonna blow off steam later on. It's all good. Uh, but according to Tuco Scorpio, who was sitting in front of them and saw the whole thing happen, but he also loves to bring up the fact that he's not office, but he was the one who broke the fight up. He was the one who went to the hospital with them. He made the report. He was one of the people who made the report. And he had to call the wives or significant others of the wrestlers to tell them what was going on and what transpired that night. So, what he remembers is he was having a few drinks with all the boys, and Arn Anderson questioning as to what was wrong with their business. Why couldn't they draw? Sid decided to chime in with, you want to know what's wrong with our business? We have an old man in Ric Flair who needs to get the fuck out of the way. Yeah, basically saying they need to pave the way for the younger talent, the hungry talent. They want to eat too. They are starving. You know, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, they're all eating from the buffet. These young cats want a shot at that buffet also. They want to eat too. They want to get these guys out of the way, the old guard. So Anderson took offense to this because, you know, that's his best friend. Without Ric Flair, Arn Anderson was just some guy jumping from stable to stable until Ric Flair came back to WCW from the WWE. So he really needed his best friend back, and in doing so, he stood up for him. He basically threw a glass, a bottle glass at Sid. Um, According to Tuco Scorpio, he recalls saying as soon as money was brought up and who was getting paid more than who, and the shot at Ric Flair, the beer bottles were flying all over the place. Okay, so I'm gonna stop it right here because this is a good time to point out that this isn't Sid's first fight with the WCW boys. He is toxic. He is he is basically the problem here.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Years prior, in October of '91, while Sid was working for the WWE, WCW was in town and they were drinking beer at the Ramada Plaza Atlanta Airport Hotel. So Sid showed up, ran his mouth about how it's so much better to work in the WWF, and showing off in front of Brian Pillman and Mike Graham, who told him to just shut up. You know, like if you're basically if you're hearing someone say like, yeah, my job is better because they pay this and that and this and that, and they're shoving it in your face, you just want to tell them to shut up already, dude. Come on, go somewhere else. Go to your job. That's how he was problematic. That's how Sid was. He riled him up and all that stuff, and then You know, Sid was an instigator. He was problematic. He's toxic. He began saying he's drawing more money than Graham has made in his entire career. He then sets his sights on Brian Pillman, who earlier in the year at War Games, the two cage thing, um, but this one in WWE had a roof on the cage, so it was like as tall as Sid is. Like, dude just had to like raise his hand up and he grabbed the cage. And the guy is like 6'9", 6'10". He's tall. He's like he can grab it right there. But he intentionally injured Pillman. He lifted him up for a power bomb, and he can't even lift him up all the way up because of the cage. So to prove a point, he lifted him up for the power bomb, but released him, and it landed on his neck. Uh, it was a bad situation at the time. But here at this time, both Graham and Pillman got up to approach Sid, who backed down but had an unnecessary excuse that his bicep was torn and didn't want to injure it some more or else he'd fight. If you're going to instigate a fight and then back down because you're currently injured, don't instigate the damn fight. That was oh goodness. Uh, that was a horrible thing to do. Uh, this was a case of fuck around and find out. So, Pillman and Graham both laughed at Sid being injured and coming down to talk trash that Sid left but came back with a weapon and challenged Graham and Pillman to a fight. So Graham grabbed that weapon from Sid and, you know, just took it away from him, and it ended up being a squeegee. The thing that you use to wipe your windshield from all the bugs. Sid went out to the parking lot and found himself a squeegee and said, "This will do." Is yeah. Anything else that would have okay? Like you're 6'9", these two guys are like probably shorter than you, and you're gonna try to fight them off with a squeegee. Um, Bruce Pritchard from the Something to Wrestle With podcast recalls Mike Graham telling his side of the story and adding that as soon as he ripped the squeegee off of Sid, he told him he was going to shove that thing up his ass if he didn't leave. Well, he left, and both Graham and Pillman were deemed heroes for the Sid situation. Heroes as in two small guys, backing up or having the big guy, the 6'9" guy, retreat and go away because he was annoying as hell at the time, like WWF guy with talking smack. So there was that. Later in 1993, Sid would come back and work alongside both Mike Graham, who is now a road agent, and of course Brian Pillman. So there's that story. Case in point, Sid has issues with people in the locker room. He gets into fight. He's problematic. We all know that. So we fast forward to this moment right here. The fight gets broken up, and they are told to go to their rooms. Arn Anderson and his boys leave with beers in their hands, and Sid waits a while with Vader to go to his room. At the hotel, Sid is trying to make it to his room, but in his way is Anderson, who is hanging out by his room with a few other people drinking. Anderson sees Sid headed his way. He breaks the bottle and threatens to cut Sid. It doesn't happen, of course. He lets Sid go to his room. It was also a good thing to point out that their rooms were right across from each other, according to security, WCW security. Sid then recalls saying in his head, I wanted to go back to the bar, but I actually went in my room, ate a part of my sandwich, and said to myself, man, this motherfucker, I have a bad temper too. I said, this effer threw a beer in my face, and now he's threatening me with a effing beer bottle broken. You have to draw a feckin' line, right? So, he says there was a chair sitting right there. So he broke the chair. The broke the. He says there was a chair sitting right there. So he broke the leg off of it, and he was going to go whack him in his head a couple of times. So he leaves with the leg of the chair like it's a 2x4 over his shoulder. Remind you of anyone? Ho. Um. Choose. What is his name? I forgot already. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. All right, cool. He went looking for a fight and was hoping Arn was still standing outside his hotel room, but everyone was gone. So instead, Sid walks over, knocks on the door, and yells out, "Come on out here, MFer, and bring your beer bottle." So, back and forth between them, and it's at this time that Sid realizes that what he's doing is wrong and stupid. So he throws the leg away and starts walking away from the door. He starts heading out to the bar, but Anderson opens the door. Sid turns around and Arn is standing there with a pair of scissors. Sid tells him that this has gone too far and he tried to shake his hand, but Anderson rushed Sid with the scissors. According to Sid, he doesn't remember getting stabbed at first. He says, quote, there were two doors in the corridor there, and he backed me up there, and I had nowhere to effing run. When he came into me and got close to me, I think I hit him one time, and he fell down like at my feet. When he did, I looked at him, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the scissors fall. They were falling out of my stomach. I have a scar right there. So when I saw the scissors falling out, I realized I had been stabbed. I didn't feel it in my face or hands, but he launched back for them a second time. But my feet had got them first, and then, I don't know, it happened so fast. Oh boy. So, the next person to see this, Tuco Scorpio, his account, he, you know, he says he stopped the fight, but Tuco Scorpio says he thought it was Vader getting into a fight with somebody because it was so loud. So he goes to Vader's room first, knocks on his door to get him to calm down. Instead, he hears snoring through the door. Tuco recalls Vader's snore can be heard through two hotel rooms. This man was out cold, but not for long. He kept knocking at the door, nobody answered. So Tuco continues to hear more commotion. So he continues to walk towards the yelling and screaming until he sees the blood. He says, quote, blood on the left, blood on the right, blood all down the effing hallway, and shit. I keep on walking, and I'm in the effing hallway with a goddamn towel. I get down there, and Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson are down there just brawling. They were covered in effing blood. This man saw a whole slasher movie right before his very eyes. How do you come back from that? He goes on to say, Sid Vicious got the effing scissors and got Arn Anderson by the hair, and he's booting him in the effing face, stabbing him with the scissors every which way. Arn Anderson got blood spitting out of him like a horror movie, and shit, man. I see Sid kicking Arn's nose, and it does a 180 turn straight the F up, and shit. I'm like, damn. He continues. I jump in, boom, push them apart and shit. And Arn Anderson just kind of falls against the wall from half drunk and half loss of blood and shit. And he just kind of stumbles against the wall. Sid kind of steps back and he looks at me and I step back into my stance and I'm like, damn, I don't want to have to take you down. You know what I'm saying? But that shit got stopped. Sid just looked at my eyes, just looked at me, eyes wide open, freaked out. Uh, so Sid realizes what he's doing. He comes to. He snapped out of it. There's a reason they called him Psycho Sid in WWE, and this is probably why. One of the reasons. Shoot, man. Obviously, this man has a problem. He says he heard Arn say that he's killing him, and when he comes to, Sid drops the scissors, looks around, and says he's fucked. He drops down. The adrenaline has worn off. He realizes that he's been stabbed and walks out of the hallway. Uh, Too Cold is tending to Arn Anderson. He can't. He finally realizes that Sid has walked away, but you can't go after one person while the other one is dying at your feet. So he let him go. In the hallway and back, we're going to go back to Vader, who finally wakes up because he heard commotion. He walks out in his underwear. Nothing but his tidy whities. Hide your wives. There's a 400-pound Vader in his underwear, just being hella nosy. He says that some guy was walking towards him like a zombie. He's half asleep, but finally wakes up to realize it's Sid with blood all over his body. Vader grabs Sid, tackles him down on the floor, and saw that all this blood was rushing out of Sid's stomach. Vader recalls this moment on Hannibal TV, saying that every time Sid's heart beat, about a nickel size of blood would come out. This looked like a fountain. This man is going to die. Less blood was coming out. He was dying. He says that the only thing that could stop the blood from coming out was him pushing his thumb inside Sid's stomach. He told Sid not to move, calls for help, and more towels. 400-pound man in his whities. Now they're soaked red. Now because Sid's blood is all over that man.
I'm here to get drunk.
That's
I
right.
have about half a cup of vodka. Drink, drink, drink.
Wait, are we live? Hi, I'm Jessica.
One professional skill that I would really like to learn is stripping.
I'm Sonia.
Because, like, I'm okay with not being artistic. Like, I'm just like, that's cool. And I'm Dawn Marie.
And we are opinionated lushes. I'll make a tomato vodka soup.
Ooh.
Also known as like a Caesar.
Once a week, we get together to drink and talk shit. We start our episodes off with a question and a drink word. We usually never stay on topic or wait for the drink word to start drinking.
You're already breaking the game.
There's a new episode of Opinionated Lushes every Friday on all streaming platforms.
Just testing mattresses. Why isn't that a job?
It probably is.
An unedited episode Saturday on YouTube.
You just want to tell people you love them?
Yeah, sometimes you need it.
It just sounds dangerous.
Have a cocktail suggestion?
A topic of interest.
A good drinking word?
Feel free to DM us on Instagram or email us at opinionatedlushes@gmail.com. If I don't know you, I will.
So go ahead, grab a drink, any kind of drink, and get ready to laugh with us and share our drunken opinions.
Vader doesn't remember how long he held his finger in, but the ambulance finally shows up. Tuco Scorpio and one of the office guys, Richard Steinberg, head to the hospital with them. Tuco says they ended up staying over there, filling out papers for Arn and filling out papers for Sid. Real name, address, the whole 9 yards. And I'm over there doing the same, filling out papers for Sid. I'm like, damn, you know what I'm saying? So Sid has to have his exploratory surgery. Arn's got to get patched up from head to toe. Damn near and shit with all his damn cuts. Richard Steinberg, who was a WCW official on the tour and was the director of marketing services on the entire tour, got a phone call at 2:30 in the morning and was told to go to the lobby. He gets off the elevator and notices a crime scene because that's what it was. He passes by both Arn and Sid's room, right across from each other. Lots of blood everywhere and smashed furniture. He passes by the lobby and notices the entire front glass window is smashed out. Sid is on the floor with Vader dying, so he covers two of the wounds with his hands until the ambulance gets there. He recalls Sid crying all the way to the hospital. One moment saying that he doesn't want to die, and the next moment he's saying he's fucked up and he's never going to be WCW World Champion. And man is dying and is the only thing he can think about, oh shoot, I'm never going to be WWE World Champion. Which reminds me so much of Scream. And Stu, and he's talking to Sydney on the phone. This is like towards the end, towards the climax. And he, like, after all this stuff that's going on, after all the murders, he asked Sydney, did you really call the cops? And she said, yeah. And then he says, my parents gonna be mad at me. Or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote. I apologize if I flubbed that up, okay? But this is what this reminded me of. I fucked up. I'm never gonna be WWE World Champion again. But I'm dying. But I think I'm dying, man. Oh, Scream was one of my favorite movies. Anyway, that's how Scissors. Damn. So Steinberg tries to contact WWE back in Atlanta, but it's the middle of the night over there. They're out in England. He leaves a message to Eric Bischoff, president. He stays up all night at the hospital, and the WWE's head of security, Doug Dillinger, shows up to relieve him, and he gets some sleep. When he wakes up, he gets a call from Atlanta telling him to remain in Blackburn with Sid and Arn while the tour continues to the next cities. He says, a day or two later, when the guys were stable enough to travel, WWE told me to take the guys on different days to different airports to get them back to the United States. I ultimately put Sid in a taxi and sent him on his way to the airport. The next day, I did the same with Arn, but taxied to a different airport. On the third day, I grabbed 2 trains and caught up with a tour in Birmingham, England. I walked into the lobby of the hotel and promptly sat down to breakfast with Rick Rude. And Rick Rude is probably saying, so how was your weekend? Oh, man, that's crazy. Eric Bischoff, on his 83 Weeks podcast with Conrad Thompson, he got the phone call from Doug Dillinger. He gave him a status report on both Sid and Arn. He also had opinions. He expressed those opinions and influenced them. But the final decision was Bill Shaw at the time. They ultimately had to look at the incident itself, the message that it sent, the perception and reality of how well the management handled it. They heard the fight started because Sid was bragging he got $100,000 a year raise, and Arn got a pay cut from Bill Watts. He's also spewing, saying it's time for Sting to step out into the limelight, and the old fuckers like Ric Flair and Arn need to retire. They're holding the younger talent back. They got into an argument. Dillinger took Arn to his room. According to Arn, Sid came in with the leg of the chair, hit Arn in the head, knocked him out, and when he came to, Sid was on top of him. So Arn grabbed a pair of scissors nearby and started stabbing Sid with it. WWE was criticized over the way they handled the situation. Half a dozen people giving different accounts of the same thing. There was no definitive story that WWE could believe, so they didn't get a clear picture, and is the reason how it was handled. Conrad Thompson says the original plan for Starrcade in December was for Vader to drop the WWE World Championship to Sid, but he was let go due to his incident. Instead, it became the WWE World Champion Vader dropping the belt to that old man, Ric Flair. Yeah. In July of 1994, Sid shows up in Jerry Lawler's promotion, the USWA, and in 1995, we all know he showed up in WWF as Shawn Michaels' new bodyguard, dubbed Psycho Sid. So let's go back at the hospital in the aftermath of all this. A few days after the fight broke out, Sid is being questioned by the police and wanting to press charges against Anderson due to the stab wound. He tells them, quote, "Nah, man, I'm not going to press charges against him. We both made mistakes. I don't know how bad he's really hurt. I really didn't." And they're like, "You know your friend? He's got not one scratch on him. Here, I'm having exploratory surgery already. I've got stabs on my face." And I said, "He's not got a scratch on him?" I thought maybe, as I say it happened so fast, I really don't remember it happening. I thought, this mother effer. So I was going to press charges on him. Later that night, the nurse came over to my room and said, "Your friend is really messed up." So he gets up, walks over to Anderson's room, and he's messed up. The cops came back the next morning and told him he's not signing that. The aftermath. Arn Anderson suffered 20 stab wounds to the chest and stomach, while Sid was only stabbed 4 times. WWE President Eric Bischoff fired Sid after several wrestlers threatened to walk out if he was not terminated. Anderson only got off with a suspension. Sid has since apologized to Anderson for the incident, and the pair are on good terms today. Alright, that is going to do it for us today. But before we go, let me know what you thought of this episode. Should I do more episodes like this? Is there a story you want me to take a look at? Let me know. Also, what should we call it? I know I was going on Twitter and Instagram, both of them with the hashtag wrestling CSI. What do you guys think of that? If I come up with another name for this, I'll probably do a poll and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode, and I look forward to your review. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Thank you for listening to the show and supporting us. You can find us on all our sort of social platforms at our Linktree, linktree.com/From Under the Apron. It has a link to our socials, the network, our Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, plus our Fountain app, Good Pods, Spotify, and iTunes accounts, where you can listen to us, as well as leave us a comment or a 5-star review, which helps us be discovered by other fans of wrestling and podcast. Check out the show notes for links to other podcast trailers that you heard on this episode. Click on the link to become a supporter of the show. Send us a message of your favorite wrestling stories, questions, comments, ratings, or requests by email. It is FromUnderTheApron@gmail.com, and I will do my best to get to them and answer accordingly. Thank you for listening and being a huge part of our community. Join us next time and find out what kind of stories are swept as we come to you from Under the Apron. Scissor me, daddy ass!